I'll openly admit this past.
Like that's like the #1 thing that's just hit me in the last year.
I was second in the world. I was second in the Olympia.
You've come every position in the top 5 except for 1, right?
What have you done with that title this year? Come on, you've got to have done something with it. You've used on a night out, surely.
I can't compete for very long.
I think the mental side of me is where I've struggled with it, and I've let it get to me.
Alright, so I guess I got into bodybuilding from sports, but who got me into bodybuilding was my brother-in-law for sure. He started dating my sister when I was in like grade 12, and he noticed I was like kind of exceptionally jacked and had a weird passion for just lifting weights at a young age. And he was a big bodybuilder at the time, amateur in the local city, and he just kind of convinced me into going on stage a year after I graduated high school.
But what was grade 12 then? Obviously from the UK we don't work in that term, so how old was you when you started then?
Like my first show I was 19.
And at what time did you start lifting?
Like 12 maybe?
Wow.
I remember gym membership when I was 12, I think, yeah.
Hardcore.
I convinced myself I had to be strong to be good at football and basketball, so I just had to go to the gym. But I did not practice how to dribble or anything, so I sucked at that.
So I started my bodybuilding career when I was 14. My stepdad was an open class bodybuilder, so he was a heavyweight. And for me, he was a bit of having a bit of a self-complex. When I was younger, I thought I was the fat kid, and I just wanted to build my self-confidence up. So for me, I started weight training straight away when I was 14. But I never had the confidence to step on stage, so that was never my goal, was to step on stage. But it was always just to like perfect or try and sculpt my physique, put some muscle on and get that self-confidence. But when I got to the age of 20, so I'd been training for about 6 years, that's when like the competitive side of me came out, because I've always competed in sports and stuff growing up. It got to a stage where men's physique just came out, and it was at that point where I thought I want to be able to test myself and be competitive. And I was looking at bodybuilders around me in the gym, and I wouldn't say they were more dedicated, but they had an end goal to go towards. So for me, that's what I kind of was lacking and what I needed in my structure. So that's when I decided to step on stage when I was 20. So
you're trying to tell me you were a fat kid when you were younger, and now you don't ever walk around without a shredded six-pack?
That's the reason why. No, but the thing was, looking back though, I was never obviously big, but in my head, I'd convinced myself I was. So I went through a stage where, I don't know, I think social media was just starting to play a big part in it as well and stuff, and I don't know, I'd convinced myself that I was this tubby little kid who needed to sort himself out. So that's where it began.
It led you here, so you can't complain.
But I think as well, subconsciously, even to this day, I struggle with gaining weight. I'm comfortable at it, and I know how to lose weight, and I know how to diet, and I'm okay in my own skin. But at the same time, when I start to get onto a certain percentage of body fat, I think subconsciously that comes back to my younger days, and that's why I've always struggled that's why I'd never be a classic or a super heavyweight bodybuilder, because I just struggle. When I get to a certain stage, I miss my abs, I want my abs back.
Yeah, that's fair. At least you know what you want and you work for it.
I'll just stay in men's bikini, men's physique.
Yeah, same thing. Passion I have for everything I do, I have for bodybuilding. I love the act of it all, the training, the body transformation, trying to put on weight, fixing certain body parts, working on the posing, the off season getting big, the in season trying to get shredded. The whole like process of it is like fun to me almost. It's like something I'm very passionate about, and that keeps me disciplined to kind of keep going through it. Of course, shows and stuff are motivating factors for me to like push past limits a lot, and for me a huge motivating factor for the last 2 years at least was just winning the Olympia. I think winning the Olympia actually showed me that my passion is more exciting than the end result of the show. And like it took me a long time to realize that like the journey and the act of it all is like the most fun part. And when I won this year, it was almost like, it was a great day, it was fun, but kind of coming off that, it was like, what's next? What do I do next?
So that's something I wanted to ask you as well though. So from obviously winning the title, you still feel like as hungry, because they always say you're never as hungry once you've won it, and you still feel that drive and that motivation more than ever? get that second title?
I think I went through a period of the year where I was saying yes to that question, but I didn't really believe it. But now I definitely do. Getting ready for prep in this offseason right now, I'm like almost more excited than last year. But I feel less stressed about it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure still, but I'm like excited about it. And I'm excited to like fucking do it again because I believe I can do it again.
Yeah, no, for me, I was always about setting goals. That was always my motivation. Like I said to you before, I'm really competitive in anything I do and stuff. And when I started my career off, I always set a goal every year was to try and achieve something that's not been achieved yet. So when I started in the amateur ranks, it was to be like the first pro from the UK to be a men's physique pro, to be the first British champion, to be the first Arnold Classic champion in men's physique. And these were all the goals I feel like I do have to have those goals, like to set them in order to stay motivated, to stay on track and to work towards something. So that's how I've always worked. I feel for me, obviously my biggest motivation, my driving force is that Olympia title. It's been difficult the last few years with injuries, to try and stay in a positive mindset as well as still believe in yourself when you're not working at full capacity, when I'm training and stuff. And it has been difficult. Even to this day, it's still difficult, but I still know in the back of my head I've got a job to do, and that's get that title. So yeah, that's what gets me motivated. That's what keeps me motivated at the minute. And not only that is obviously the family. I've got a little baby on the way, and it'd be class, wouldn't it, to say to your son that your dad's men's physique Mr. Olympia.
That wouldn't be bad at all.
I know, because it's weird, because even saying I was second in the world, it just doesn't have that ring to it. Oh, I was second in the Olympia. Bore off, Dad.
So you asked me if I'm just as motivated now that I've come first place. Do you feel like extremely more motivated that you've come every position in the top 5 except for one, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Did that like fire you the fuck up, ready to just fuck shit up this year? Like, there's no other places to get.
But it's funny you say that, because in some sense it does, and it massively does, but then on another sense it's quite difficult, because they want a specific look, and like I feel like my look is very difficult to attain what they wanting, like more size. Like I'm not built to be the size where men's physique's going. So in the back of my head, although I've still got that motivation and that drive to be number one, I just feel like I wouldn't say it's going further away from me, it's just pushing boundaries, which I've always struggled with, which is the size game. Like, so it's difficult. I'm still pushing, and I'll still be at my best come December. It's just very difficult when you start looking at the likes of Raymond and people who are winning my division now. They are seriously bigger than me. So there's always that, but at the same time, yes, I still want to be Mr. Olympia. So every time I'm training, I'm thinking of that title, which, yeah, you become tiresome sometimes. 6 years, mate, trying.
Right? All right, would you say you're someone who lets yourself get in your own head?
I'd say, recently, yeah. I think since my injuries, yes. Before, I just did it for fun, and I don't think like even sponsors, pressures, nothing really got to me. It was just I was doing it for the love of it, and I was doing it for me and to achieve. It's a bit selfish really, it's just to win titles for myself, and it wasn't about sponsorships or anything. Whereas as I've got older, and obviously there's more pressures with having family and stuff like that, and injuries, and you can't work at the capacity you want to work at, that gets in my head. The mental side of it all is kind of what we just touched on briefly, was injuries. Like for me, I get frustrated with myself when I can't go to the max of how I want to do, because I just want to train and as hard as I can, and like leave nothing left, and know that I've left no stone unturned. Whenever injuries occur, or I'm trying to work around an injury, mentally that is quite difficult. And the past 2 years, obviously I've had slip discs and I've had 2 hip surgeries, so it's they've not been little scrapes and scratches to get through. They've been quite difficult, and last year was a low point for me mentally, because I had near enough 6 months away from the gym. I was on crutches for 3 of them, and then social media plays a big part in it. When you're seeing your rivals winning shows, getting bigger, getting the momentum into the shows and stuff, and I'm bedbound with crutches. Mentally, it's very hard. But then you can flip that and use it to your advantage. So when I came out of my rehab and started training again, that was a huge driving force for me to get back up there. I was an underdog. I wasn't really talked about. People were saying I shouldn't really have done last year's Olympia because obviously I was starting at a lower point, and obviously, I could ruin my streak of being in top 5 and being that guy. But for me, I saw that as a huge driving force, mentally, physically, to keep pushing, get in the trenches, and that for me was a huge thing. But that mentally is what I've had to struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think like the whole mental aspect of anything in life is my favorite thing to like try and hone in. Like if you were to ask me what makes me a good bodybuilder, it's not because I understand how protein synthesis works and the muscles train and everything. I think it's because of the mindset I've been able to keep myself going on, mainly through preps and shit. And like if I go through an injury, that scares me way less than if I notice my mind start to trail and stop believing in myself. Because I think my mind is way more powerful than an injury in my body. Given if you break your hip, you're kind of fucked. But like I've been in and out of the hospital for like 2 preps. Yeah. One prep was in the hospital for a week. I tore my hamstring last year, 3 weeks before the Olympia.
Yeah.
And like, given I could still kind of train my legs and suck it up on it. But each time, whether I was in the hospital or torn hamstring, like my mind just like didn't even think of it. I could like just block it out and keep doing what I had to do every single day. I'm just like, didn't even quaver. It wasn't like, no, doesn't matter. You have a torn hamstring, you're still competing. Suck it up, get back and train legs next week. And I think that's like my, like, the proudest thing I have about myself, honestly, is my mindset. Nothing I've accomplished, but kind of like my mindset through going through things like that and being able to understand that like, given anything that happens, I can't give up. Got to do it, and there's just no questions asked.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in that respect. Like back in the day when I was coming through the ranks and I was trying to like say win the Arnold, 2016, 2017, I slipped discs, and very similar to you, 3 weeks out from the Olympia, I had to go and have an emergency epidural just to walk again. So in my head, there was no change in the fact I'm stepping on stage, I was driving, I was okay. I just think, I'll openly admit this past, and I've said it on camera, I said it on my YouTube channel a few weeks back, that since 2 years, that I think the mental side of me is where I've struggled with it, and I've let it get to me. And obviously, like you say, the mind is a lot stronger than the physical side. So if you get that back on track, then I think the physical will be fine. But last year wasn't great for me. Yeah, if I could speak to myself now, like my younger self now, I would say be very smart in your training and look after your body. Like for me, I train with super heavyweights since I was like a teenager, so they go really heavy. We never used to stretch or do warm downs, or there was none of that. You went in, lifted as heavy as you could, and got out of the gym as quick as you could. So I think, looking back on all the injuries, like I say, I've got now, I think they could have been prevented if I'd have trained smarter, if I'd have looked after my body a little bit more. Physio, I've only recently, say the last 3 years, have regular physio, whereas obviously I should have had that from the very start. Things like that, I would say, and probably learn nutrition a bit quicker, because when I first started, which is showing how old I am now, is social media wasn't a thing, and you couldn't go on the internet and get advice about nutrition. You used to have to try and ask bodybuilders and stuff in the gym, and they used to say like, the little baby food pots. They used to eat baby food pots after a session, and a tin of rice pudding. It was terrible. So that was the kind of nutrition I was brought up on until I started to learn myself later down the line. So I kind of wasted, not my main years, but like the 7 years where I could have been growing and making some good gains. I kind of wasted a little bit.
My biggest one now, probably something I don't think I could understand as a kid, honestly, but if I could make myself understand it, would be to try and enjoy the journey a lot more. Like that's like the number one thing that's just hit me in the last year. It's to just like enjoy like the moment in it and don't just wait for what you're working towards. I was just like stressed a lot about a lot of pressure on me or putting it on myself and all this shit going on, and just like not really just like sitting back and being like, I can't compete for very long. You should be enjoying all of this, taking it all in, and doing as much as you can with it, and just being grateful for it in the moment, rather than waiting until the show's over to look back and be like, wow, that was fucking cool. So I would say that's probably my number one thing.
I think it's difficult though, don't you think? Like when you're in prep and you've got that mental game and you've got that end goal, it's difficult to take it all in, because all you want to think about is your next meal, when you're sleeping next, and it's kind of hard, isn't it, to think and just enjoy the process. You're kind of in a tunnel vision. So
yeah, it's hard as hell. You're looking at yourself every day like, fuck, I look like shit, I'm wearing a hoodie to the gym today. When like, then the next year, maybe you stop competing and you'll never look like that again in your life. And you were complaining about it when you look like that, which That's probably not really gonna change because that's just our competitive like ass heads being like, you need to look better. But I think I'm trying to be better at that because like I said, I don't think I'll be competing for a crazy amount of time in my life, and I would like to enjoy as much of it as I can.
It's worked for you, that attitude, that mental state has worked for you, hasn't it? You're Mr. Olympia. Not a bad shout.
Yeah.
What have you done with that title this year? Come on, you've got to have done something with it. Have you you've used on a night out, surely?
Yes.
Do you know who I am?
I don't,
Google
but some of
me.
my friends do, and then when they bust it out, I'm like, he's lying, he's joking, and then I walk away.
No, you don't. You're like, hell yeah.
That's gonna be you next year.
Yeah, of course you'll. I'm going to abuse it. But I'll have my wife and kid with me, so it won't have the same effect.